There is something tortoises have been hiding from us for millions of years. And when scientists finally discovered the truth, it changed everything. The tortoise you are seeing is not a real tortoise. That is a $100,000 robot spy. This robot lived among wild tortoises for several days, and what it recorded completely shattered everything scientists thought they knew. For decades, researchers spent millions studying these creatures. They published hundreds of papers, and they got it all completely wrong. Here is why. The moment humans showed up, tortoises would stop and pretend to be something they were not. But this robot? They accepted it. The secret behaviors it captured were unbelievable. Tortoises communicating, forming friendships, and even grieving their dead. You will understand what they were hiding, and you will never look at this animal the same way again. But first, let me show you the impossible problem that made scientists so desperate they had to build a robot tortoise just to solve it. For decades, scientists studying wild tortoises faced an impossible problem. Something strange kept happening. Every single time researchers approached to observe these creatures, the tortoises would change. They would stop what they were doing. They would retreat into their shells. Their natural behavior would vanish the moment a human came near. Imagine if every time someone tried to study you, you immediately changed how you acted. That is exactly what was happening. This was not just frustrating, it was a scientific crisis that was literally killing tortoises. Tortoises are among the most endangered reptiles on Earth. The desert tortoise? Its population has declined by over 90% in some areas, 90% gone. To save them, scientists needed to understand how they really lived, how they communicated, how they found food, how they chose mates, how they navigated their territory. But there was a major problem. The very act of watching them was destroying the data they needed to save them. Traditional observation methods failed completely. Camera traps? Tortoises would notice the equipment and avoid those areas. Radio tracking? It told researchers where tortoises went, but not what they did when they got there. Drones? Too loud, too obvious, too disruptive. That is like you walking down the street and spotting a hidden security camera from half a football field away. Their awareness was that sharp. The problem was fundamental. Tortoises have excellent vision. They are remarkably intelligent, not just by reptile standards, but by any standard. They could detect human presence from distances that shocked researchers. They could spot cameras hidden in bushes. They could sense when something in their environment was not right. Think about how you can feel when someone is watching you, even when you cannot see them. Tortoises have that same instinct, but amplified by millions of years of evolution. They are survival experts, and when they sensed observation, they became different creatures entirely. Imagine aliens trying to study humans, but every time they got close, we all immediately sat up straight, smiled politely, and pretended to read books. They would think we were the most boring, well-behaved species in the universe. They would never see us binge-watching TV at 2 a.m. or arguing with our families or dancing when no one is looking. Many researchers spent several years observing tortoises and later realized they had never actually seen true tortoise behavior, not once. Everything they had documented was performance, not reality. Without understanding their real behavior, every conservation effort was basically a guess. Millions of dollars, thousands of hours, all based on incomplete data. It is like trying to save a culture you have never truly understood. The breakthrough would require something radical, something that had never been attempted before in wildlife research. Scientists needed to become invisible, or more precisely, they needed to become tortoises. And that meant building something no one had ever built before. A robot so realistic that it could fool one of nature's most intelligent and cautious creatures. A disguise so perfect that even you could not tell the difference. Solution sounded like science fiction. Build a robot so realistic that wild tortoises would accept it as one of their own. But the challenge was big. The team assembled for this project read like the cast of an impossible heist movie. Engineers from robotics labs, wildlife biologists who had spent decades studying tortoise behavior, materials scientists, computer programmers, animal psychologists, even artists who specialized in creating lifelike animal replicas for museums. Their mission: create a spy that could fool one of nature's most sharp-eyed creatures. The challenge was huge. This was not only about building a robot that looked like a tortoise to human eyes. It had to pass inspection by actual tortoises. These were creatures that had evolved over millions of years to recognize their own kind. They had to solve 5 impossible problems. Problem number 1. The team started with 3D scanning technology, capturing every detail of real desert tortoises, the complex color patterns on the shell, the texture of the skin, the exact size of the legs, head, and tail. Then they discovered something terrifying. Tortoise shells are not all the same. They have unique patterns, like fingerprints, that other tortoises might recognize. So they created multiple versions, each with different shell patterns, to see which would be most accepted. They were basically creating fake identities. The internal systems were even more complex. Cameras had to be hidden inside the head, placed where the eyes would be, giving researchers a tortoise-eye view of the world. Microphones captured sounds. Temperature sensors watched the environment. All of this had to fit inside a shell-shaped body that weighed exactly what a real tortoise would weigh. 1 gram off, and the trick could fail. Movement was critical. This is where things became truly complicated. Tortoises do not walk like other animals. They have a specific and particular rhythm to their steps. The robot legs needed to move with that same slow, ancient patience. Too fast, and it would seem wrong. Too mechanical, and the illusion would break. Months of work would be wasted. The team studied hours of tortoise footage, breaking down every movement into programmable sequences. How a tortoise turns its head, how it extends its neck to check something out, how it pulls back when startled, even how it blinks. The most challenging part was not what you would expect. It was the blinking. Tortoises blink at a specific rate, and getting it wrong would be like meeting someone who never blinks. Instantly weird. The skin texture needed special materials that could handle desert heat while looking realistic. We are talking about 55-degree temperatures that would melt normal robotics. The shell needed to be tough enough to survive if another tortoise bumped into it or tried to climb on it, which apparently tortoises do. A lot. No one expected that. After months of work, they had their spy, a robot tortoise so advanced that it cost more than a Mercedes, over $100,000 for a single unit. So realistic that when they first tested it in a controlled environment, even experienced tortoise handlers did a double take. But the real test was still ahead. Would wild tortoises, creatures that had survived for millions of years by being careful and observant, accept this mechanical fake into their world? The scientists were about to find out, and what happened next would either prove months of work or destroy everything. The morning they deployed the robot tortoise, the research team was absolutely terrified. They had chosen a location in the Mojave Desert where a group of wild tortoises was known to gather. The area was remote, harsh, and perfect for watching. But getting the robot there without being seen by the tortoises was like trying to sneak into a house where everyone is watching the door. The team arrived before dawn, when tortoises were still in their burrows. They placed the robot near a known tortoise path, turned on its systems, and then ran back to a hidden watching post nearly a quarter-mile away. Then they waited. The first tortoise appeared around mid-morning, an older male, his shell scarred from decades of desert life. He came out of his burrow, paused, and seemed to scan the area. The researchers held their breath. The robot sat completely still, exactly as a real tortoise would when resting. The male tortoise began walking directly toward the robot. Every step felt like forever. The researchers watched through binoculars, their hands shaking. If the tortoise rejected the robot, if it showed fear or aggression, months of work would be wasted. Worse, they might have hurt the very animals they were trying to help. The male tortoise stopped 3 feet away, his head extended, nostrils moving. He was smelling the robot. The team had even thought of this. That's why they coated the robot outside with chemicals that copied tortoise scent glands. Then something amazing happened. The male tortoise simply walked past, not running away, not attacking, just accepting. As if the robot was just another tortoise, doing what tortoises do, which is absolutely nothing interesting. Over the next 3 days, more tortoises came across the robot. A female checked it out closely, even touching shells in what researchers recognized as a greeting behavior. Then something next happened. A young tortoise climbed partially onto its back before sliding off and continuing on its way. The robot had to support the weight without moving unnaturally. One wrong shift, and the game was over. But it held perfectly. By day 4, the robot had been fully accepted. Wild tortoises would rest near it. They would walk past it without worry. They would even interact with it as if it were part of their group. The spy was in, and the cameras were recording everything. For many days, the robot sat among wild tortoises, and what it captured on camera during that time would completely change everything scientists thought they knew about these creatures. Because the tortoises were not just accepting the robot, they were showing it their secret world, behaviors no human had ever seen before. Tortoises communicating, tortoises forming friendships, tortoises grieving, even tortoises playing. When the research team watched the first week of footage, they were amazed. They could not believe what they were seeing, and what you're about to see will blow your mind, because everything we thought we knew about tortoises, it was completely wrong. First discovery: tortoises were not the lonely creatures everyone believed. When humans were not around, tortoises actively looked for each other. They had best friends. They would travel significant distances to rest near specific individuals. They had friendships. Think about that. These creatures were maintaining social bonds, just like you choose to sit with certain people at lunch. The next discovery was even more shocking. The robot recorded a behavior scientists had never seen before. Tortoises communicating through a series of head bobs and shell touches. It was not random, it was patterned, deliberate, almost like a language. One tortoise would approach another, perform a specific sequence of head movements, and the other would respond with its own sequence. They were talking to each other. When researchers first saw this footage, they could not believe tortoises had a communication system that complex. Feeding behavior was equally shocking. Tortoises were not just randomly eating whatever they found. They were selective, strategic. The robot watched as tortoises would pass by tons of food to reach specific plants. They seemed to be medicating themselves, choosing plants with particular properties when they appeared sick. One tortoise who appeared to have a breathing problem based on its breathing patterns, spent 3 days eating almost only from a plant known to have germ-fighting properties. By the 4th day, its breathing had gone back to normal. This tortoise diagnosed itself and chose the right medicine, without a doctor, without the internet, just millions of years of evolution. Mating behavior revealed even more complexity that nobody expected. Males did not just fight for females through aggression. They performed detailed displays, positioning themselves in specific ways, using the angle of sunlight on their shells to appear more impressive. Females were picky, rejecting multiple males before selecting a mate based on standards scientists still do not fully understand. It was like a tortoise dating app, but way more complicated. But what the robot captured next was both heartbreaking and beautiful. When an elderly tortoise died near the robot position, other tortoises gathered. They did not just walk by. They stopped. They touched the deceased tortoise shell. They stayed for hours in what could only be described as a vigil. Tortoises were mourning their dead, showing grief, paying respects. Perhaps most surprisingly, the robot recorded tortoises playing, which was pure fun. Every assumption about tortoises being simple, instinct-driven creatures was completely off. These were complex social animals with individual personalities, preferences, and behaviors that only came out when they felt safe and unwatched. The robot had revealed a secret world that had existed all along, hidden just beneath the surface of scientific understanding. Communication systems, medical knowledge, grief, friendship, play, intelligence that rivaled many mammals. But discovering all this created a new problem, because if scientists had been this wrong about tortoises, then what else were they missing? How many other species were we completely misunderstanding? And more importantly, how many conservation efforts were failing because we did not know what these animals actually needed? The footage from the robot tortoise did not just change scientific papers, it changed conservation strategy entirely. And what happened next started saving tortoise lives immediately. When the many days of footage were analyzed, the impact on the scientific community was immediate and profound. Scientists realized they had been wrong about tortoise behavior for decades. The conservation programs they had designed were flawed because they were based on the idea that tortoises were solitary, silent, and simple, which was all a mistake. They had been protecting them like plants. They were focusing just on their environment instead of protecting them like social animals. This meant the tortoises needed their friends and they needed their social groups to survive. The first and most urgent change was to the way researchers approached the habitat. If tortoises could spot a camera trap or a drone, they could easily see a new fence or a change in their environment. Conservation zones needed to be designed with the knowledge that the tortoises were watching and judging every change. The second change involved communication. Because tortoises talk to each other, it was really important that they could be able to talk to each other. Scientists had believed they could simply relocate individuals to new areas to boost populations. But if a tortoise was removed from its best friend or its social group, it could suffer severe stress and potentially fail to breed. Relocation programs were immediately put on hold until researchers could figure out how to move whole groups or family units. This new understanding was literally the difference between life and death for the species. But the most humbling revelation was about intelligence. Tortoises were not just smarter than anyone thought. They were emotionally complex. The footage of them mourning proved they felt profound loss, like real grief. The footage of self-medication proved they had sophisticated internal knowledge, like knowing exactly what they needed when they were sick. The footage of play proved they had personalities and a capacity for joy, just like us. The lead scientist compared the discovery to finding a lost scroll that completely rewrote human history. They had to tear up every textbook written about tortoises and start from zero. But the real value of the robot tortoise was what it did next. Because the robot was not just a spy, it was also a messenger, and the message it sent to the wild tortoises was the most powerful lesson of all. The robot tortoise experiment represents something larger than one species or one study. It is a complete shift in how humans understand the natural world. For centuries, we have studied animals by forcing ourselves into their spaces. We have assumed that our presence, our observation, our methods were neutral. The robot tortoise proved they never were. Every time we watched, we changed what we were watching. But here is what makes this technology revolutionary. Spy cameras disguised as rocks or plants have existed for years, but they are fixed, limited. A robot that can move, interact, and be accepted as part of the community gives us a window into animal behavior that was previously impossible. Engineers are now developing similar robots for other species. Robot penguins to study Antarctic colonies, robot fish to observe reef behavior, robot primates to understand forest social dynamics, each one designed not to disturb, but to disappear into the world it is studying. But the deeper lesson is not about technology, it is about humility. The robot tortoise revealed that these old creatures, often dismissed as simple and slow, have rich inner lives we never suspected. They have friends, they communicate, they grieve, they play. They have been doing all of this for millions of years, and we never knew because we never learned how to watch without being seen. How many other species are we completely misunderstanding right now? How many animals are we trying to save without truly knowing what they need because our very presence changes who they are? Think about every nature documentary you have ever watched, every zoo visit, every wildlife study. How much of what we saw was real, and how much was just animals performing because they knew we were watching? The robot tortoise teaches us that sometimes the best way to help is to step back, to observe without interfering, to learn without forcing, to understand that intelligence and complexity exist in forms we might not immediately recognize. These tortoises have survived ice ages, continental shifts, and the rise and fall of countless species. They have done it by being exactly what they are, not what we assumed them to be. The robot simply gave us the chance to finally see them clearly. And now, with this technology spreading to dozens of species, we are about to see the animal kingdom like never before. So the next time you see an animal at a zoo, in a documentary, or in the wild, ask yourself, am I seeing the real them, or just their version of a job interview? Because the natural world does not need us to understand it to function. It has been working perfectly for billions of years. But if we want to protect it, if we want to preserve the incredible diversity of life on this planet, we need to learn how to see without disturbing, how to study without changing, how to care without controlling. Sometimes the most advanced technology serves the simplest purpose, helping us get out of the way. Remember at the beginning when I said this would change everything you thought you understood about animals? Now you know why. There is a secret world happening all around us. Animals communicating, feeling, thinking in ways we never imagined, and we are only just beginning to see it. In the end, the robot tortoise experiment showed us something simple but powerful. Nature doesn't need us. It only needs us to stop getting in the way. If we want to understand animals, We can't force ourselves into their world. We have to watch without disturbing, care without controlling, and let them be who they are when no one's looking. This wasn't just about tortoises. It was a glimpse into hidden lives we've ignored for generations. And if this story changed how you see the natural world, stick around, because there are countless more secrets waiting out there. Thank you for watching. Drop a like, subscribe, so you don't miss out on our next video. Enjoy the rest of your day.